The massive starship glided silently through the endless darkness of space, carrying a single passenger who would soon change everything. Sujin Park sat quietly in her small compartment, her fingers tracing the edge of a worn photograph of her grandmother. Outside the viewport, distant stars flickered like tiny promises of something greater. The Interstellar Academy was nothing like she had imagined. When the ship docked at Horizon Station, a massive rotating structure that housed thousands of alien species, Sujin felt incredibly small. Tall, tentacled beings from Epsilon Prime passed by her, their translator devices buzzing with conversations that seemed to always include a dismissive chuckle when humans were mentioned. Her academy uniform was crisp and pressed, midnight blue with silver trim, marking her as a first-year cadet. But unlike the other students, her uniform seemed to carry an invisible weight of doubt. Humans were still considered the newest and least experienced species in the galactic community, barely decades into interstellar travel, while other civilizations had been exploring space for millennia. The registration hall was a massive circular chamber with holographic displays and alien administrators processing hundreds of cadets from different worlds. When Sujin approached the registration desk, the Krylonian administrator, a blue-skinned creature with 4 arms, looked at her with obvious skepticism. "Human. Interesting," the administrator said, his translation device rendering his native language into precise English. "Your species has limited experience." Sujin said nothing. She had heard these comments her entire life. While other children dreamed of playgrounds, she had studied star charts. While others watched entertainment programs, she had learned quantum mechanics and xenobiology. Her placement test results were exceptional, top percentile in strategic thinking, spatial awareness, and adaptive problem-solving. But numbers meant little in a universe where humans were still seen as newcomers, as the youngest race attempting to prove their worth. The Academy's central corridor was a marvel of engineering. Transparent walls showed the endless expanse of space, artificial gravity creating a sense of walking on a perfectly level surface. Alien students from 100 different worlds moved around her. Some were silicon-based life forms that looked like living crystals. Others were gaseous entities, contained in specialized environmental suits. And then there were the looks, always the looks. Whispers, subtle gestures, barely concealed mockery. Another human trying to play galactic explorer. They barely understand their own solar system. What could they possibly contribute? Sujin had heard it all before. Her grandmother's training had prepared her for more than just physical challenges. She understood that true strength wasn't about proving others wrong, but about proving yourself right. Her assigned living quarters were compact but efficient, a standard design used across the academy to accommodate various physiological needs. A small sleeping pod, a data terminal, storage compartments designed to adapt to different body types. Everything was meticulously organized, reflecting the precision of interstellar design. As she unpacked her minimal belongings, a data crystal, with family records, a small quantum communication device, and a handcrafted meditation stone from her grandmother, Sujin felt a sense of determination growing inside her. The universe was vast. Humans were new. But newness didn't mean weakness. Her first day of training would begin in less than 6 standard hours. The simulation rooms, the combat training zones, the strategic planning halls, they were waiting. And somewhere in this massive station, among thousands of alien students, she would find her place, not by accident, not by chance, but by choice. The stars outside her viewport continued their silent dance, ancient and indifferent to the young human who would soon make her mark on the galaxy. Sujin Park closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Tomorrow would be the first day of everything. The small data crystal flickered to life in Sujin's hands, casting a soft blue light across her quarters. It was late, well past the standard sleep cycles of most cadets, but she couldn't rest. Something about the crystal, a gift from her grandmother, seemed to pulse with an energy that went beyond simple technology. Her grandmother, Hannah Park, had been more than just a family elder. She was a legend whispered only in private moments, a woman who had trained in secret martial arts that predated modern combat techniques. The holographic message began to play, the elderly woman's image slightly distorted, but her voice clear and strong. Not all strength is seen, the recording started. Humans have forgotten an ancient way of understanding movement, of connecting with the fundamental fabric of the universe. Sujin leaned closer. The message continued, revealing fragments of a martial art so old that it had been forgotten by most of human history. It was more than a fighting technique. It was a way of perceiving reality itself. Her grandmother explained a technique passed down through generations, a method of combat that understood the quantum nature of physical movement. Most martial arts focused on external techniques, strikes, blocks, throws. This was different. This was about understanding the very fabric of space and motion at its most fundamental level. In the quiet of her room, Sujin remembered the training sessions with her grandmother. What seemed like simple meditation had been complex lessons in quantum perception. She had learned to feel the subtle vibrations of matter, to understand how energy moved through space. The data crystal contained more than just a message. Hidden within its quantum storage were encrypted training sequences, complex movements that looked like a cross between Tai Chi and advanced quantum physics calculations. Each motion was a precise mathematical equation, each stance a complex interaction of potential energy. Most cadets would see this as impossible. But Sujin understood something they didn't. Humans were adaptable. Humans could learn. Humans could change. Her grandmother's final words echoed in the small room. The universe is not about strength. It's about understanding. Remember this, my child. Outside her window, distant stars continued their ancient dance. Planets spun, galaxies moved, and in this small moment, a young human began to understand a truth that most species had forgotten. Combat was not about power, it was about perception. The next morning, Sujin approached her training session differently. Where other cadets saw preparation as physical exercise, she saw it as a complex mathematical problem. Each movement became a calculation, each breath a potential energy transfer. Her first practical assessment was a standard combat simulation. Alien instructors watched, expecting another human failure. They had seen hundreds of human cadets come and go, each one proving their initial assumptions correct. But Sujin was different. When the simulation began, something changed. Her movements were not just movements. They were conversations with physics itself. She didn't block attacks, she redirected them. She didn't strike. She suggested alternative energy paths. The other cadets watched in confusion. The instructors leaned forward, their multiple eyes suddenly very interested. Something was happening. Something unexpected. A quantum martial art, forgotten by most of humanity, was about to be remembered. And Sujin Park was going to be the one to remind the galaxy exactly what humans could do. The data crystal in her pocket seemed to pulse, a silent witness to a moment that would change everything. The combat simulation room hummed with energy. Holographic barriers flickered, creating a complex landscape of potential danger. Sujin stood at the center, surrounded by cadets from 6 different star systems. Each looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. Instructor Krell, a massive biomechanical being from the Orion Collective, watched with cold, mechanical eyes. Simulation begins in 3 standard minutes, his translation device announced. Flatly, alien cadets moved into position. Their combat suits were marvels of technological engineering, adaptive materials that could change density, color, and electromagnetic properties in milliseconds. Compared to their advanced gear, Sujin's standard-issue uniform looked almost primitive. The first attack came from a Centaurian cadet, a serpentine creature with multiple limbs and a neural network that processed combat scenarios faster than most computer systems. His movements were calculated, precise, designed to overwhelm through sheer computational speed. But Sujin wasn't there. Where she had stood a millisecond before was now empty space. The Centaurian's attack passed through nothing, his complex algorithm suddenly rendered meaningless. Other cadets began to notice. Whispers started. Confusion spread. This wasn't how human cadets were supposed to fight. A Rigelian warrior, massive, crystalline, with body structure that could withstand extreme pressures, launched a simultaneous multi-vector attack. Energy weapons, physical strikes, quantum disruption fields, all converged on where Sujin should have been. Again, nothing. Instructor Krell's mechanical eyebrows raised slightly. His sensor systems were recording every microsecond, every quantum fluctuation. Something unusual was happening. Sujin wasn't avoiding attacks. She was understanding them before they happened. Each movement was a complex mathematical conversation with potential energy. She wasn't fighting the simulation. She was negotiating with its fundamental rules. The other cadets began to change their approach. What started as a standard combat assessment became something else. A hunt, a challenge, a desperate attempt to corner this unexpected human, but she moved like water, like thought, like possibility itself. Her grandmother's training wasn't about fighting. It was about understanding. Understanding that reality was more flexible than most species believed. That motion wasn't just physical. It was a negotiation with the universe's fundamental laws. 30 minutes into the simulation, something extraordinary happened. The alien cadets, those who had laughed, those who had dismissed humans as weak, were now standing completely still. Their advanced combat suits powered down. Their complex attack algorithms had crashed. Instructor Krell's recording devices showed something impossible. Sujin hadn't defeated them through violence. She had defeated their entire conceptual understanding of combat. Simulation complete, the room's artificial intelligence announced. Complete silence followed. Sujin stood in the center of the room, breathing normally. No wasted movement, no unnecessary tension, just pure, potential energy. The other cadets looked at her differently. Now, not with mockery, not with dismissal, but with something close to respect. Something had changed, and everyone in the room knew it. The universe was about to learn something important about humans, something they had forgotten, or perhaps never understood. Jin simply waited, calm, focused, ready for whatever came next. Her grandmother's teachings echoed in the silent combat room. True strength is not about defeating others. It's about understanding the path before the journey begins. The holographic systems began to reset. Instructor Krell's mechanical systems processed and reprocessed the data. Something fundamental had just shifted, and it all started with one human cadet who understood that reality was more flexible than most believed. The challenge came 3 standard weeks after the simulation incident. J1, the Academy's most decorated warrior, stepped forward with a formal challenge. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, his exoskeleton gleamed with combat medals that told stories of 100 different planetary conflicts. "The human will face me," he announced, his voice a deep rumble that echoed through the training hall. Alien cadets and instructors gathered, expecting another moment of galactic entertainment, another opportunity to watch a human fail. Sujin wore simple training gear, no advanced combat suit, no technological enhancements, just her body, her training, her understanding. The combat arena was a marvel of engineering. Adaptive surfaces that could simulate any terrain, gravity controls that could change in milliseconds, quantum field generators that could disrupt molecular structures. It was designed to test the absolute limits of any warrior's capabilities. Jaewon moved first. His attack was a symphony of calculated violence. Each movement was a perfect mathematical equation of destruction. His species had developed combat techniques over 10,000 years of continuous warfare. He was undefeated, legendary. But Sujin saw something different. Where others saw an attack, she saw potential energy. Where others saw a threat, she saw a conversation with physics itself. Her movements were not blocks or strikes. They were negotiations with the fundamental nature of motion. The first few moments were a blur of impossible movements. Jaewon's attacks passed through where she had been, finding only empty space. His computational systems began to struggle. How could something move like this? How could a human understand combat at this level? Alien spectators watched in complete silence. Something extraordinary was happening. This wasn't a fight. It was a dance. A complex mathematical dialogue between motion and possibility. Sujin didn't fight Jaewon. She communicated with his attack, suggesting alternative paths, redirecting energy with minimal effort. Her grandmother's training went beyond physical technique. It was about understanding the quantum nature of movement. Every motion was a complex equation, every stance a potential energy transfer. 15 minutes into the challenge, Jaewon's combat systems began to fail, not because of physical damage, but because his entire understanding of combat had been fundamentally challenged. The arena's quantum sensors went crazy. They captured something impossible. A human was rewriting the fundamental rules of combat in real time. Jaewon fell. Not defeated. Transformed. Complete silence followed. The academy's head instructor approached Sujin. His multiple eyes studied her with a mixture of confusion and respect. "Explain," he demanded. But Sujin said nothing. She simply bowed, a small, respectful gesture that spoke volumes. News traveled fast in the galactic communication networks. A human cadet had done something unprecedented. She had challenged the most fundamental understanding of combat in the known universe. Alien species began to look at humans differently. No longer were they the youngest, most inexperienced race. Something had changed. In her quarters that evening, Sujin opened the data crystal her grandmother had given her. The holographic message played again. "Remember," her grandmother's image said, "the universe is more flexible than most believe." Outside her window, stars continued their ancient dance. Planets spun, galaxies moved, and somewhere in the vast darkness something fundamental had shifted. The human had just rewritten the rules, and this was only the beginning. The Galactic Council chamber was unlike anything humans had seen before. Floating platforms suspended in a massive holographic space. Representatives from 1,000 different star systems gathered to witness something unprecedented. Sujin stood at the center, her simple academy uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate ceremonial attire of other species. The room buzzed with translation devices, with whispers, with anticipation. News of her combat performance had spread faster than light itself. The quantum martial art she practiced wasn't just a fighting technique. It was a completely new way of understanding universal physics. The Centaurian Grand Ambassador spoke first. His crystalline body shifted colors as he processed his thoughts. "We have underestimated humans," he declared. The words echoed through the chamber, a massive admission from a species that had existed for millions of years. Alien scientists had been studying the sensor recordings from her combat demonstration. What they discovered challenged everything they knew about motion, energy, and potential. Sujin's movements weren't just physical. They were a complex mathematical conversation with the universe itself. Representatives from different star systems looked at her differently now. No longer was she just a young cadet. She had become something more. A bridge between human potential and galactic understanding. The Orion Collective's chief researcher stepped forward. "Your technique," he said, "suggests humans have been observing the universe in a way we've never considered. You don't fight reality. You negotiate with it." Sujin remembered her grandmother's teachings. Every motion was a story. Every breath, a potential energy transfer. She had learned something most species had forgotten, that true strength wasn't about power. It was about understanding. A holographic display began showing her combat recordings. Slow-motion analysis revealed something extraordinary. She wasn't avoiding attacks. She was understanding them before they happened. Her body moved like liquid, mathematics redirecting energy with minimal effort. The council began discussing a radical proposal. Humans would no longer be considered a junior species. They would be recognized as a potential key to understanding quantum movement in ways no other civilization had imagined. "We request," the Epsilon Prime Ambassador announced, "that this human be granted special research status. Her understanding could revolutionize our entire approach to combat, physics, and universal movement." Sujin stood quietly. She wasn't seeking recognition. She was simply being who she was, trained by a grandmother who understood that humans were capable of more than anyone believed. Outside the council chamber, communication networks across the galaxy were buzzing. A human had done something impossible. She had challenged the most fundamental understanding of combat and physics. The recording of her combat demonstration was being studied in research centers, military academies, and scientific institutions across hundreds of star systems. What they saw challenged everything they knew. As the council deliberations continued, Sujin thought about her journey. From a small training room to the most important gathering of intelligent species in the known universe. Her grandmother's teachings had prepared her for this moment. The universe was more flexible than most believed. Humans were more capable than anyone had understood, and this was just the beginning. The Galactic Council continued their discussions. Debates raged, proposals were made, but one thing was certain. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. Sujin simply waited, calm, focused, ready for whatever came next. Her grandmother's final lesson echoed in her mind. True strength is not about defeating others. It's about understanding the path before the journey begins. The stars outside continued their ancient dance. Planets spun, galaxies moved, and somewhere in the vast darkness, everything had changed.